basically we got the whole thing or most of it by the time it's officially released. I do like, from a schedule standpoint, the Rams and Seahawks, arguably on paper, the two best teams in the NFL going into the 2026 season. Washington is playing home games against both of those teams. The best overall situation would be to play both of those teams at home at 1 p.m. Eastern. There is historical data that does back that West Coast teams coming east playing an early 1 o'clock Eastern start, don't perform as well as they do in a late afternoon start or a night game. So if these leaks are true, playing Seattle and the Rams at 1 o'clock at home, that's kind of an advantage. Based on what we have so far, they've got 4 standalone nationally televised games. I thought there was a chance they would get more than I think their record suggested they would get. I had 5 of them mocked, so they're one short of that number, with still 9 games left that we have not seen so far. Anyway, there you go. Man, did you watch Detroit-Cleveland Game 5 last night in the NBA playoffs? Did you watch it, Max, or were you watching the hockey? I heard the hockey was wild.
I was watching
no pun intended.
I was watching the Minnesota Wild take a commanding 3-goal lead and then lose it all to one of the best teams in hockey. So the Avs just continue to be a wagon, and it's been a great Stanley Cup playoff so far.
Yeah, where is that Montreal Buffalo series right now?
I believe Montreal is up 3-2, going back to Buffalo. So it's going to be, they're trying to stave off elimination.
All right. The NBA game last night was wild. I mean, the Pistons really blew it. First of all, I'll take you through it chronologically. This was a 2-2 series, Game 5 in Detroit. The winner of this series plays the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals. Detroit kind of dominated the first half, and Cleveland was doing what they do, which is turn the ball over. They're just they're painful to watch from my standpoint. They have great individual players, obviously, in Donovan Mitchell. And in terms of Harden, I mean, one of the all-time great scorers. I can't stand watching him play. The least enjoyable a superstar to watch of the last 15 years for me. But Mobley and, they've got players. I mean, Strus can really shoot it. He was unbelievable last night, made 6 threes. He was 6 of 8 from behind the arc. But they had, in the first half, they had 10 turnovers that led to 20 points. A lot of coaches, when they get frustrated with their teams turning the ball over, Buzz Williams said this early in the Maryland season on national TV at halftime. They were playing, I think it was Alabama in Vegas, and his team had like 14 first-half turnovers. And he said, I'd actually much rather we just dribble the clock out and hand the ball to the referee and turn it over that way so that we can go back and set our defense. And that's not what happened in the first half last night. Cleveland turned it over 10 times, and it led to 20 Detroit points because so many of the turnovers were live ball turnovers on the perimeter. They were the turnovers that you see James Harden commit all the time. He had 3 or 4 in the first half. He had 6 for the game. And they're just, casual, lazy, just horrible turnovers. He wasn't the only one. And yet, Detroit only led by 8 at halftime. It felt like it should have been, a double that, 16-point lead. In fact, I think that's where the game was lost, because it could have been put away in the first half. Detroit is not, a smooth, explosive offensive team. They have one player that you can count on to score, Cade Cunningham. And he had 39 last night. I mean, he is sensational, but he was not that down the stretch. I'll get to that in a moment. But I really felt like Detroit blew it in the first half. That game should have been over at halftime with the way the Cleveland Cavaliers treated the first half of that game so casually. So it's just sloppy basketball. They should have been down 16, 18, 20 at halftime, but they weren't. And they came out and they took the lead, outscoring Detroit in the third quarter. And look, James Harden, he had 6 turnovers in the game and some bad ones even in the fourth quarter with the game on the line. But he got to the free throw line with his, drawing foul skills. It drives me nuts, the shots. Here's the problem. Like, he's so skilled at drawing fouls. And part of the reason he's able to do it is you can't give him space because he will kill you with the step back 3. And if you're going to guard him closely, he's got a way of getting those arms underneath your arms and drawing fouls, even on a drive. And he went to the free throw line 14 times in the game. 11 of 14, missed a couple of key free throws in overtime. It wasn't that he shot the lights out. He was 8 of 21 from the floor, 3 of 10, but he had 30, And a lot of people, afterwards, James Harden finally answered the bell in a big spot in the postseason. First of all, it's the second round. We got a long way to go. He's had big games in early round games. He's had big games in later round games. It's just that his team typically doesn't advance, unless you want to go back to when he was a 6th man in Oklahoma City. He had 30. He had 8 rebounds. He had 6 assists. He had 3 blocked shots in the game. He also had 6 turnovers. And Donovan Mitchell had a rough night last night. He had 21, but he was 1 for 8 from behind the arc. And the reason for that is, and look, this is a bit of a reveal for many, including yours truly, because I don't watch a lot of NBA in the regular season. But Amen Thompson's twin brother, Amen Thompson, plays for the Rockets. Asar Thompson plays for Detroit, is just an absolute dog defensively. He is so good defensively. So is his brother. But he was unbelievable on Donovan Mitchell last night. And he had a play at the end of regulation after the Pistons blew a 9-point lead. They blew a 9-point lead with 3 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. It happens in the NBA. And Cleveland had a chance to win it in regulation. And he stripped Donovan Mitchell as Mitchell drove towards the rim with about 3 seconds to go. And the ball was loose. He went for it, and he was tripped by Jared Allen. I mean, it was an obvious trip. And the refs swallowed the whistle. Game 5, tie game, tenths of a second left when it happened, maybe a second left when it happened. They swallowed the whistle. Tony Brothers said after the game that he looked at it in the pool report and said he still doesn't see a foul. It would have been one of those calls that would have been controversial, but it certainly looked like a trip. And it also looked like there may have been tenths of a second left on the clock when it went out of bounds. And without a foul call, it would have actually been Cleveland's basketball there. But that would have been game over, assuming that Thompson would have made one of the 2 free throws. Maybe he would not have. He's not a great free throw shooter. But the game went to overtime, and, basically Detroit had gone cold over the final 3 minutes of regulation. They were cold in overtime. Cade Cunningham, I think, missed 7 of his last 8 attempts. They doubled him consistently because Detroit just doesn't have other reliable scorers. And Jalen Duren, who was a phenomenal regular season player, has been a terrible postseason player for the Pistons. And the Cavs won the game, 117-113. I'll tell you what, they were celebrating in a way that I think they felt the series was over. They have not lost at home in Cleveland. And James Harden took a big, deep breath when this thing ended. Because I think for him, more is on the line for him at 36 years old in this postseason than anybody else on that Cleveland team. When he got traded for at the trade deadline, Cleveland was considered a championship contender. If they go out in the second round with him fumbling and bumbling all over the basketball, game in and game out, it would be, I think, over for him. I mean, he's going to play next year 37, I'm sure, and somebody's going to give him a boatload of money and he's going to average 25 points a game. But I'm talking about postseason wise. We'll see what happens. Can Detroit go back to Cleveland on Friday night and win? I don't know. They just don't have enough scoring other than Cade Cunningham. Cleveland's a 3.5-point favorite in game 6 Friday night. I kind of like the Pistons. San Antonio, we got a doubleheader tomorrow night. Pistons, Cavs at 7, Spurs, T-Wolves at 9:30. Both of those games on Amazon Prime. And that could set up potentially 2 Game 7s on Sunday. We'll see. Be interesting if there's only 1 Game 7 when that game will be played at night or in that 3:30 spot. That's up against the PGA Championship. I don't know if they'll do that. The other thing, too, is I think the series that gets closed out in 6, game 1 of the conference finals would begin Sunday. I think. I'm not 100% sure about that. But maybe one of the more entertaining and dramatic playoff games last night. But the team that I want to win that series did not win, and they're in trouble. They got to win on the road. They haven't done that, and I just don't know if they have enough scoring other than Cunningham to do it. All right, when we come back, yesterday when we were talking Aiyuk Diggs, our longtime caller, Evine, brought something up about Brandon Aiyuk's contract, which led him to believe that it does make sense to trade for Aiyuk. I reached out to Spot Track founder Mike Giannetti to sort of walk us through whether or not it makes sense to trade for him. You'll hear some of that next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. So we got another major Washington schedule leak. If it's accurate, they are going to open the season Sunday, September 13th at 4:25 in Philadelphia against the Eagles. I had that one too. My mock might be on the verge of a record-setting number of games picked accurately. And no, I did not have any access to any information about this year's schedule. That's why I put it out a week ago Wednesday, a week ago yesterday. Last year, Max and I were talking during the break. The reason I wanted to get it out so early this year is so that there was no accusations of knowing anything. Last year, the Madrid game had already been announced when I put it out, which, whatever. So it looks like at Philly, that would obviously be the second half of, I'm assuming, a Fox doubleheader in week one. That'd be a very interesting opener. Last year, I remember we had Mike North on the show, one of the schedule makers, afterwards, and I said, the one issue I had with the schedule as a Washington fan is you had Skins Eagles in the NFC title game, and you're not playing the first Philadelphia game until December 20th. Remember, they played 2 of the final 3 games last year, and it's possible that the games will be meaningless by the time you get there, and they were. They were completely meaningless. It's not meaningless in week 1, that's for sure. Washington at Philadelphia, if these leaks are accurate, and I am taking the leaks from a social media account at Nerding on NFL, calls himself NFL Nerd, and I'm pretty sure he had a lot of this stuff right last year. It just seems like these schedules are just getting leaked over and over again. By the way, the Christmas Day games right now appear to be Green Bay, Chicago at Soldier Field early, Seattle Rams late, but there is a Christmas night game that has not been leaked yet. The Christmas Eve game was leaked, Houston at Philadelphia. On Christmas Eve, that would be a Thursday night game, December 24th at 8:20 p.m. Keep you posted in terms of the leaks. Look, may look stupid if these leaks aren't accurate. These are not the official announcements from the league, but it does seem like over the last couple of years, these leaks have been accurate much more than they haven't been. And if so, Washington now has 9 of its 17 games leaked, including just moments ago at Philadelphia in the opener at 4:25. All right. Yesterday on the show, Aveen, who's been a longtime caller, I enjoy Aveen's calls. He said, go look at Brandon Aiyuk's contract on Spot Track because it looks like it's changed a bit. And whether or not it changed or not is actually immaterial. And I'll play the soundbite from my conversation with Mike Giannetti here in a moment. But what Aveen said was, look, his base salary is only listed as $1.215 million. So just over $1.2 million is a base salary. So why wouldn't you trade for that? Especially if the rest of his contract, the other 2 years, 2027 and 2028, where he is due in base salary $27.2 million in 2027, and then in 2028, $29.1 million. If those 2 years aren't guaranteed, why wouldn't you just do, a 6th round, 7th round swap, to get it done, to get him in, make sure he's, able to participate in off-season activities, make sure he's, able to participate in training camp, and have him for the full upcoming, lead up to the regular season. And I said, well, that's news to me because I thought it was $27 million in 2026 that a team would owe him. And he said, well, just look at it. And I pulled it up, and sure enough, it said base salary $1.215 million. But per usual, there's a lot of other stuff behind that. That is actually the base salary, for Brandon Aiyuk in 2026. But I had Mike Giannetti on the show, And I explained to him, it looks like it changed a little bit, or did it change? What exactly is Brandon Aiyuk's contractual deal that is keeping teams from trading for him versus waiting for him to be released? Here's what he said.
Yeah. So along with that $1.2 million base salary is about $26 million more in roster bonuses, option bonuses, all those bells and whistles that come with NFL contracts, which are seemingly hard to understand at times. So it's a $27 million payout this year. However, none of that is guaranteed. Nothing going forward because of his issues with the 49ers and eventual suspension are guaranteed anymore. So while you are inheriting a contract that has, finances to it, it is essentially an open book that you can, as long as the player and agent are on board, and maybe that's what the hangup is with some of these scenarios, you can sort of move things around, start over from scratch. We'll see kind of where that lands. But I do think your first point is still the best point, which is there are 31 teams just waiting this situation out. They want the 49ers to June 2nd, after, the cap split can come into fruition. They want the 49ers to outright release him so that they can set their market with this player, because I do think it's a limited market, and the teams that are interested want to come way down on where that cost currently is, which is about 3 for $85 million total remaining on this contract.
So, they're basically, in summarizing what he said, is a practical matter. Yes, the base salary is $1.215 million. But if you trade for him and you inherit that contract, he's going to play for you in 2026. And if he plays for you in 2026 the entire season, it's going to cost you $27 million. And that's why teams are hesitant to trade for him. Because if you trade for him, you're not giving up a pick with the, idea of, well, let's just see if it works out, and if it doesn't, we'll cut him loose. You're trading for him because you expect him to, at the very least, play in 2026, which would cost you $27 million if he plays in 2026. Now, I had a longer conversation with Mike, and let me just essentially net it out for you. So, the number one is this. It is possible that to get to a team that he wants to play for, and let's assume that he really wants to be in Washington for a moment, that Washington could, do a late round swap, trade a 6th for a 7th, something like that. Maybe just give up a 7th, a day 3 pick to the 49ers. And he commits prior to the trade, because the 49ers give him and his agent permission to talk to Washington. He commits to tearing up his current deal and playing on a much more team-friendly deal, a 1-year prove-it deal, which, by the way, Mike said he believes there will be enough interest that if he played it out, he'd probably get between 12 and 15 million as a base, with incentives that might get him to 20 million for next year. That's higher than I would have thought. But that is coming from somebody who's much more expert at these scenarios than I am. But you could potentially work out a deal, but he doesn't have to. Like, if you trade for him, you're inheriting his contract unless he commits to tearing it up and doing a new deal, right? So if you inherit that contract and he plays for you next year, you've given up a pick and you're going to pay him at least $27 million next year. If he plays the entire season, you could decide you're going to cut him in October and not have the rest of whatever the prorated version of it would be. But the bottom line is you're probably going to pay him $27 million next year. And then you're going to he'll be under contract for 2 more years. If it goes well, that's actually the advantage of inheriting his current contract, is if it goes well in 2026, he's under contract in 27 and 28 for a pretty decent number if he turns out to be high level again. But the rest of it is not guaranteed, and you could cut him loose and not owe him anything, and no dead cap, penalty, because that's all absorbed by San Francisco. So netting it out, the reason teams don't want to give up a pick is that it's going to cost them $27 million next year if he plays the whole season. And if you trade for him, you're intending for him to play the entire season next year. Again, it's possible he could work out a deal with Washington that's more team-friendly because he wants to be here. But the idea, here's the other part of this. Like, just do the math. If Genetti's right that he's going to end up getting a deal that's 12 to 15 million base with incentives up to 20 million for one season, and that's the prove-it deal. Seems like an expensive prove-it deal, but let's just say that's the prove-it deal. Well, if you traded for him and he played in 2026, you were going to pay him $27 million. If he performs, that's a difference between, 20 and 27 million, $7 million. So maybe it would make sense to give up, a late day 3 pick swap for him just to get him in early. Mike totally agreed that even though, the 49ers get the benefit of, splitting up the dead cap money over 2 years if they do it, whatever they decide to do post June 1, they don't have to pay him anything until September 1st. It's like a $25 million bonus. They'll never pay that. They could take it all the way to the end of August without having to write a check to him for anything and then turn him loose then. And out of spite or maybe just out of good business, they may choose to do that. So that was the situation with Brandon Aiyuk. When Aveen brought that up, I thought it was interesting. There's a lot of ways to look at this, but it certainly feels like teams aren't interested in trading for him because of the idea that you'd be inheriting a contract that would pay him $27 million, regardless of what the base is. All of the other options, all of the roster bonuses, et cetera, would get it up to $27 million if he were to play in 2026. In fact, the $25 million roster bonus on September 1st would be due by the new team, by the acquiring team. So there wouldn't even be a big savings if you cut him loose midway through the season. Now, I also asked him while I had him on about Stefon Diggs and what a Stefon Diggs contract might look like in free agency. This is what he said.
Yeah, it's a bumpy road there. But this is one of those guys that sort of, whether it's self-induced or from injury perspective, has always sort of bounced back and been the exact player that said team that signed him is asked him to be. There's a lot to that, despite his age and what's going on around him right now. We've got him priced exactly with Aiyuk here. He's still a $13 to $15 million player, even on a 1-year look, on a 1-year guarantee. It kind of feels like that Cooper Kupp situation in Seattle where, we know we're kind of overpaying a little bit for that for what, he's going to provide for us. But there's a moment in a season, if things are going well, he's going to be the guy we're looking to. That's exactly what Diggs can be and has been for multiple teams now. So, again, in that 12 to 15 range on a 1-year deal, and you throw some incentives in there, which he's had tons of incentives throughout his career that have sort of self-motivated him through the dog days of the season.
Do you think there's an active and sizable market for him in terms of number of teams?
I'd probably put these two players pretty close together. I think the teams that need it are looking at these two players specifically right now. Maybe there's a couple of names on the trade block, that are in conjunction with it. But yeah, I'd say there's probably 4 to 5 teams monitoring both of these scenarios, with Aiyuk having the slight favor because of age and maybe ability. But yeah, I'd put this all into one big basket right now in terms of teams that are at least fringe WR2 need right now.
There you go. I thought the interesting thing, and I'd have to go back and match it up to when he signed these deals, but that Stefon Diggs has pretty much lived up to whatever deal he has signed when he has signed a new deal. Now in Houston, he got injured, during that season. That was the one season in which he's been seriously injured, but came back last year and, performed up to the contract with 85 catches for over 1,000 yards. You know what? I bet whoever signed Stefon Diggs, as long as the quarterback situation is solid and the team is decent, I bet he'll live up to whatever they sign him to next year. I'm interested in both. I don't know why you guys wouldn't be. I mean, obviously we don't have all of the information. You gotta, trust that Adam Peters, Lance Newmark, Sasna, the whole group, like they're looking into all of those items that we don't have access to, and we're not able to sort of decipher in a decision making process. But yeah, I mean, if they were to sign either one of those players, my assumption would be they believe they're getting a player that's motivated, healthy, mentally, physically, and ready to roll. Why would you do it, for any other reason? So if they ended up signing either one of the two, I'd feel good about it. If they ended up signing both of them, I'd feel good about it. I would trust that they've checked off the boxes on the kind of people they're bringing into, a pretty good culture in terms of the locker room. All right. More schedule leaks coming as we speak. We've got you're going to hear Brian Keefe, the Wizards head coach, at 11 a.m. But if you want to weigh in on something that you'd really like to see when you get the entire schedule tonight, we already have 9 games now that have been leaked and or officially announced. But if there's something that you really want to see, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. I had one thing that was preferable for me that if the leaks are right, I've already gotten, which I think is a big help for the team as far as their schedule goes next year. We'll get to that coming up next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Had it wrong. Steve Sands is going to join us at 11. Brian Keefe, the head coach of the Wizards, at 12. Sands at Aronimink in Philadelphia, where the PGA Championship is underway. The NFL schedule continues to leak out from a lot of the, I think, accurate leak places on social media. We'll see if they are correct. The only games we know officially based on league announcement is the Indianapolis game in London on October 4th. But at this point, 9 games have been leaked, including the season opener at Philadelphia 425. And then week 3 at home against Seattle, week 4 in London against Indiana, week 8 against Philadelphia at home on Sunday Night Football, week 9 against the Rams at home, 1 o'clock. Week 10 is a Thursday night game in the Meadowlands against the Giants. Week 11, Thanksgiving week, the 23rd, Cincinnati at home on a Monday night. Then week 14, a Sunday 1 o'clock game at home against Houston. And then a Sunday, December 20th game at 1 o'clock against Atlanta. That's what has been mocked. That is what has been leaked and or officially announced so far. What do you hope to see? I think that Seattle and the Rams, the 2 West Coast home games against West Coast teams being 1 o'clock Sunday games is huge. I think that's a big deal. And there is, certainly history, not necessarily outright wins, but outright covers. West Coast teams playing 1 o'clock East Coast games are something like, 41% lifetime against the number. That's against the number. That isn't outright. But, playing Seattle at 1 o'clock week 3, playing the Rams at 1 o'clock at home in week 9. I like that. I am interested now to see where their 2 West Coast games get placed. At Arizona, at San Francisco. Obviously, those games won't be, games in which you're playing back-to-back more likely than not. The NFL's probably done that before, but they try not to. But it would be great to have off of maybe the bye week, one of those, West Coast trips, or after a Sunday home game at 1, not after a Monday night game or a Sunday night game. Anything, Max, that you hope to see when we get the whole schedule put in front of us tonight?
The bye week is always such a concerning thing for me, just where it falls in the season, because if it falls right, that can really catapult the remainder of your season. So I'm just hoping that the bye week's not going to be too early, but with the week 4 game in London against the Colts, I do think that it's probably going to be a little bit earlier than I like. So that's my big kind of concern for tonight, but I mean, we'll see when the schedule comes out.
Yeah, I think there's a really good chance we're going to get the bye week in week 5. That would be Sunday, October 11th. It would be the earliest bye week we've had in years. It makes sense that it's about time anyway that there's an earlier bye week. We've had the later season bye weeks a lot, or at least the mid-season bye weeks. And typically you get your bye week coming back from an international game in Europe in particular. So we'll see if that happens after the London game against the Colts. Let's go to Cyrus. Cyrus, what's your schedule wish when you see the whole thing laid out in front of you tonight?
Kevin, good afternoon, good morning. One of my wishes every year is that if there are West Coast trips, that they're done earlier in the year. I actually wanted either the Arizona game or the Dallas game, which isn't West Coast, but to be week 1, because it's sort of before the fatigue has already set in. So if you're going to have those extra travel miles, it's better to get them done earlier in the year. So that's my ultimate preference. Really glad to see Philly week 1. Even if it wasn't a rematch of the NFC Championship last year, I don't know how the NFL decided to do both of them towards the end of the year with 1 week in a. Did anybody think that through? Like, thought that was a bad idea?
Yeah, I
Maybe
had the
just
guy. I had
override?
Mike North, the schedule maker, on afterwards, and I'm going to try to get him on, the show next week, or somebody involved in the schedule making process again this year. But what he said was just he cut to the chase, and he said the games against Dallas in the division with Philly are still the much higher profile games. He said, yeah, Washington had a great run. They've got an exciting player, and they're getting a lot of big time spots, but the Philly Dallas games are more valuable. And if you recall, that was the kickoff opener last year, at Lincoln Financial, Philly and Dallas. So yeah, I mean, I thought, when you do that, you just risk two valuable properties of the 272 games being meaningless by the time you get there. And he acknowledged that, but said, that's ultimately the reason, Washington, Philly took a backseat to Philly, Dallas.
Well, so on top of that, I think since Jaden Daniels was drafted, the Washington Dallas competitions have not been where either team has been at full strength. So I would prefer one of the Dallas games to be early as well, because we haven't had a true, I don't think, unless I'm remembering incorrectly, Jaden versus Dak and everybody else at full strength. That's what I want the most. When it happens, I don't care. Just early. Yeah.
Who was the quarterback when we got beat by the kickoff return after the 86-yard touchdown to Terry at home? The season finale in 24 was a meaningless game for our team for the most part. Actually, it turned out not to be meaningless because we moved up in the seeding because of Green Bay's loss. But who was Dak? Dak wasn't the quarterback, right? That day? I think you're right that he wasn't the quarterback. I'll look it up. Joe in Springfield, go ahead.
Hey, what's up, Kevin? How you doing?
What's up, Joe?
Hey, real quick, it was Cooper Rush and then Trey Lance
Cooper
in 2024. That's what it was.
Yeah, Cooper Rush was the quarterback. Yep.
So I would also say, and I agree with what Max was saying, that like, are we going to have our bye week early in the season, say possibly after the international game in London? Because if you notice the last two times we've been overseas, like 2016 in London, we had our bye week. Last year in Madrid after Miami, we had the bye week. But the other point I'm wondering is, are we going to have two road games to start the season before the week 3 game against Seattle if that schedule is accurate? Because, I mean, could it possibly be that we go to Arizona on the West Coast for 425? And real quick, Kevin, it's interesting to see that. I know the schedule isn't fully out yet. Dallas's road schedule this season against the AFC South and the NFC West, and also they had to be in Lambeau Field. Yeah. I mean, yeah, those. I mean, who knows? I mean, the division games count as well towards the end of the season, but those could be brutal games as well coming down the stretch too. So who knows with the schedule? But anyway, I think if we have two road games, do we get an early bye week? That's what I'm looking for tonight. So
yeah, I'm trying to think. The Dallas Giants Sunday night game is at the Meadowlands, correct? It's at the Meadowlands. So if Washington goes road, week 2 could be at Dallas. It could be at Arizona. I mean, there's several possibilities still. I would bet that Washington no, because they've got Seattle at home week 3 that's been leaked, and then they've got technically a home game, even though it's a London game in week 4. I don't know what's going to my mock was Houston at home week 2, and that's already been leaked as a late season game. Let's go to Mark in Largo. Mark in Largo, go ahead.
Yeah, it's I can understand why they're doing what they're doing, but look, no one's expecting us to do much this year, so we got to shock the world.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it.
This is just schedule talk. This isn't, how are they going to do?
Schedule talk.
Yeah.
Well, here's the beauty of it, Chris. Here's the beauty of it, Kevin. Let me tell you what the beauty of it is. No one knows what this offense is going to look like. No one knows. Okay? Philadelphia's going to find out, and we owe Philadelphia what they did to us in 2013.
I know, but do you have a schedule preference? That's the question here. Is there something that you'd like to see? Is there a wish list item for Mark and Largo when we have the entire schedule in front of us?
But Kevin, does it really matter?
I'm not asking about offensively how we're going to be this year. I know it doesn't matter. Why did you call if it didn't matter? Did you have an answer?
Yeah, I do. I think I would love to see us start off at home in Dallas, the second game of the season.
Okay.
Here. Our home opener will be here. I would love that because that'll give us some kind of cushion when we play Seattle because we owe the Seahawks too. I'm tired of losing to Seattle here. I'm tired of that. We beat them out there, but we can't beat them here. So yeah, I would love to see us beat them.
That seems right. Although they did beat Russell Wilson on Monday Night Football during the Rivera era at home. I remember that.
With Taylor Heineke, I know Sabal.
Right, with Taylor Heineke.
Happy about
exactly.
That.
All right, I got to roll. Thanks, Mark and Largo. Per usual, doesn't listen. Here's the question, or he listens. He hears the question, but he decides he's going to bring his own question and answer to the phone lines. He's one of my favorites, though. I do enjoy him. Steve Sands from Aronimink in Philadelphia, where the PGA Championship is underway. He'll join us next. PGA Championship in Philadelphia at Aronimink is underway. Right now, Bud Cauley at the top of the leaderboard at 3 under through 3 holes. Steven Jaeger actually at 4 under now through 11 holes. Steve Sands, our good friend from the Golf Channel and NBC, joins us right now. Before we get to the golf, are you following all of the schedule leaks, or is that not something that you care about at this point?
Kevin, how long have we been friends? 30 years?
Yeah.
I mean, nobody geeks out on the schedule more than me and you. Nobody. You kidding me? I love it. I absolutely
so what do you
love
think
it.
so far? Have you seen all of the, we've got 9-10 games leaked at this point?
Yeah, I saw it. I like it. I mean, these international things, I don't dig them, but I guess from what I understand, now that there's 17 games, when you have, like let's put it this way, when the Colt thing first happened and playing in London, my first thought was, is it a home game or a road game? But I guess the league does it, and they always do it the right way. But when you have 9 home games, now that there are 17 instead of 8, you can give one up, and that's okay. So, and then I saw the line. I saw that we're favored by 1.5 in the early line.
Okay.
For that.
That is subject to change, as you know.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
But in May, it's nice to hear that. Look, I like it. What I'm most curious about, I know this is going to sound ridiculous, and maybe I missed it because of the PGA this morning, but it's just so ridiculous. I want to know what they're going to do with the Patriots on week 1. I know what they wanted to do. What they wanted to do was make it Patriots-Seahawks week 1, because there's so many games week 1 that are single window games because the schedule is so, spread out that week 1 that they wanted to have that. But don't you kind of now, with all the things going on with Vrabel, you got to just bury that at a 1 o'clock or a 4:05?
It's already been leaked that
it
it is going to be the Patriots. It's been leaked. We'll see if it's correct. This isn't official, but from some of these solid social media schedule leak sites, it's going to be New England. But let me just say, I agree with you, and I said it yesterday that it would surprise me if New England were in that spot because of the Vrabel situation, not to mention the last time we saw this game, it was a boring one-sided beatdown.
Right. And I don't know if you want to have 2 games in a row like that, but I don't mean it in the blowout sense, but just the same matchup. And also with the Vrabel thing's the most interesting thing. Do you want to have a 2-hour pregame show and have that? Or maybe there'll be a deal with the whatever network it is that they'll say, okay, let's move along with that stuff. But I don't know. I think the schedule is incredible. I don't know how they do it. Mike North is an absolute legend up in the NFL offices, and how he does it. He's been on your show a bunch. He's always on NFL Network. And I love the NFL schedule. And there's nothing that makes me smile more on your show, because I'm an avid listener, that when you go through your schedule reveal and how many you get right, and then you go through the record later in the year. I love when you do that. I think the schedule thing is great.
Well, I'm actually off to a pretty good start.
Who are we opening up with?
Philadelphia on the road at 4:25 on Sunday the 13th. That's what I mocked, believe it or not.
That's
so I
knew you mocked it.
So we'll see. Usually, I think the most I've ever gotten right is 4. And I think right now I'm at 3 right, with Indianapolis probably followed by the bye week and Philly. And I think I've got a shot at getting the Giants as the season finale at home, right? That would equal my best ever effort. But here's what let me just tell you what I like so far from the games that have been leaked, because I actually do think this is something of substance. The 2 West Coast teams that they have at home this year, the defending champion Seahawks and the Rams, it's been leaked that both of those games will be Sunday 1 o'clock games in Landover. You know this because you dabble a little bit and a lot in the world of wagering on these games. And West Coast teams coming east for a 1 o'clock game, we know what the percentage of betting against the number, against that team with the number is. It's usually an advantage East Coast team. So you got those 2 games at 1 o'clock on Sundays.
Listen, you want to dive even deeper to that, you can make a strong case that the Seahawks are the Super Bowl champions because Stafford and the Rams coughed up that game in Carolina last year at a 1 o'clock game, and they lost home field advantage because of that. You can make a very strong case. That one game, they should have won that football game, and they didn't. And maybe that 1 o'clock all the way across the country thing is great. But I love the schedule thing. I knew that it was. I knew it was going to be Philly, but I wasn't sure where, if it was home or road. But at Philly, 425. Was it last year or 2 years ago when you were like, we're going to be hosting Jacksonville because they want the Skins to get off to a great start?
Arizona.
And
Arizona.
Sure enough,
I had the Arizona game right for the first game without Snyder.
Arizona. That's right. And I knew that I knew they were going to do that. And I think they think that we're going to be a little bit better. And I think the reason that you're right about the Giants is because if you just figure that the Eagles win the division because they're just better, but that we're going to be better, the Giants are going to be better, that could be for a wild card spot, and that's a great, great matchup in Week 18 or Week 17, whatever you call it now.
Right. We got a long way before we get to that. And the whole schedule, I'm telling you, the way it works now, this schedule thing has become so popular. The whole thing's going to be leaked probably by the time I finish up with this show. And
it's so brilliant. I love it.
And yet, the networks tonight, NFL Network and ESPN, I don't know what ESPN station it's on, if it's ESPN or ESPN2, but it's going to get a massive number for the schedule release.
It's incredible. Look at the draft, Kevin. I mean, my God, the draft gets a bigger number than the World Series does. It's just the best, man. The NFL does it right. The schedule leak is so great, and tonight is going to be awesome TV, and nothing will happen. It's amazing.
Exactly.
It's amazing. I love it.
All right, let's talk some golf. The PGA Championship is underway at Aronimink. First of all, and Scott told me this the other day when he arrived there. I didn't know this, and I'm sure, it's been several years, but they cut all the trees down there as well. When did that happen? And why are so many places like Congressional, why are they doing that?
Well, while I was consuming a few beers with Stanford Steve on Tuesday night, our man was throwing down Diet Cokes like he normally does.
Of course.
And we were all chatting about this exact topic. And it's just the way things go. And Xander Schauffele says it best. You want to make a golf course look like it was 100 years ago? Why does anybody want anything to be what it was 100 years ago? And by the way, if you leave a tree or two up, 100 years from now, there'll be big, beautiful trees again. So what are you going to do it all over again?
Well, they planted those trees with the intention of the trees growing, I think.
I know. Of course. It's ridiculous.
So why do they do it? Why do they do it?
It's an agronomy thing. And it's not an environmentalist thing, but it's an agronomy thing. It's a water issue, which is, golf is trying to make sure that they, keep moving forward and not, hurt the water situation. And also growing grass, I guess, although I never had a problem at Congressional with grass underneath trees, but I guess it's just hard to keep grass growing and make it viable underneath these big, tall trees. I don't understand it, Kevin. I just don't get it. And I also don't love it. I don't like these golf courses are like that. Go look at Hilton Head. Go look at Quail Hollow last week. I mean, my gosh, that's what a golf course looks like. Go ahead and cut the tall Georgia pines down at Augusta National and see what everybody thinks of that. I mean, that's just not how it works, but that's the way things are going. And Andrew Green is the guy who's like basically in charge of all of those kinds of projects. He's the one who kind of did it at first. And it's become very, very popular, and I just don't like it. I don't like it at all.
Yeah, and I don't know that members necessarily like it either. I mean, look, Philly's got so many. I just like the in-close big city East Coast golf courses to be what you think. Philly's got some great courses, right? Marion and Aronimink and Philly Cricket, et cetera. But I saw the pictures of Aronimink. I'm like, when did that happen? But tell me how, it gets played. Is it bombs away now? Is it an easier course? Are we going to see 16, 17 under win this? How do you think it plays this weekend?
I think Aronimink is much easier now than it was when it was in 2010 and 2018 when they moved it from Congressional DC because of the majors and all that stuff. Justin Rose won it in 2010. Justin Rose also lost in the playoff in the last time he was there too. So he's gone 1-2 there at Aronimink. It'd be an interesting pick today, this week at 45 years of age. It's an easier golf course per se for these guys because when you have the distance that these guys have, and you put scoring clubs in their hands with irons, say 8, 9s, and wedges, you're going to see low numbers. If the total this week going into the week was 12.5, the fairways are also incredibly wide. But the rough is thicker this week than it normally is at a PGA Championship because the fairways are so wide. They have to have some type of defense.
Yeah,
and the greens are enormous, and they could tuck some pins if they wanted to, put them in goofy spots if they wanted to. They don't normally do that at the PGA like they do at the U.S. Open. But, you know, if I was a betting man, the total this week was 12.5 under par. I would go better than that, and I would play that for the table limit.
You would. Well, does it? Wouldn't that concern you that it's 12.5 versus 14.5? Like they're begging you to play it over or under? Actually, you know.
Yeah, under. Yeah, but yeah, exactly. It's kind of like higher seed, lower seed in the tournament. That's why I said better. I keep saying under and over. I'm like, I'm just saying better.
You think something better than 12 under par, 12.5 under par will win the tournament?
If 13 under or better doesn't win this week, I'd be stunned. Really, really stunned. I just think these guys are just too good. And it's a par 70. The best score in the history of a major championship has been a 62. I had a couple of people tell me earlier this week they thought a 61 would be shot. Now, I don't know if anybody will shoot a 61, but somebody could shoot 62, 63 here. And yes, I think 13 under or better will win this week.
All right. You've already mentioned Justin Rose. We'll come back to, your favorites and, a pool of players that you really like. Tell me about Scottie Scheffler right now. He's been so close. Is this the week that he actually breaks out and wins? Because obviously he's been close in the last few that he's been involved in.
Yeah, there's an old saying in golf at the highest level, Kevin, that you can't win a tournament on Thursday, but you can lose a tournament on Thursday. And for whatever reason, Scottie Scheffler's the best player in the world. I know he's not the hottest player in the world, but he's the best player in the world. He won earlier this year. He's got a string of runner-up finishes in the last few weeks, his last few starts. And that's only because, for whatever reason, he gets off to bad starts on Thursday. His scoring average on Thursday is not good. And then he's behind the 8 ball. And when you're even at an Aronimink that plays just a little bit easier, a little bit more scorable than most major championship venues, if you are too aggressive because you're behind and you have to step up your game plan just a little bit more, you can get punished pretty severely. And that's the reason that he has not won more this year. He'd be the first one to tell you that. If he gets off to a good start today, then I think he'll be right there on Sunday with a chance to win, not coming from behind, but like right there at the top of the leaderboard with another chance to win a major championship, be back-to-back PGA champion. But today's the day. For whatever reason, he gets off to a very slow start, and he's tried different things, different mindsets, but he's a great, great player. I'm not worried about Scottie Scheffler at all. I just need to see him get off to a better start on Thursday.
You know who's not off to a very good start? Bryson is 4 over through 9 holes. So what's going on with him after the disappointing Masters?
Yeah, that's not a shock. He's just not strong right now. He's not playing great. And with this whole live thing going on, it's a mess right now with Bryson. What's he going to do? I mean, the other day, my God, he says a lot of wacky stuff anyway, but the other day he's like, I don't even know if I want to go back to the PGA Tour. Maybe I'll just play events that invite me and I'll just go be a YouTube player. Like, what is that? You're a professional athlete, for God's sakes. Stop saying stuff like that. Be normal, for Christ's sake. Like, you're not going to just play YouTube golf. You're one of the best players in the world. You want to win major championships. You want to put your stamp on the game at the highest level. You have to go play somewhere that's meaningful. And I said this to someone earlier, Kevin, and you can understand this better than anybody I know because you're such a massive sports fan like me. We all know what these guys make for a living in team sports. They're playing for titles and history and trophies. In this sport, in golf, when you're playing on live, you're playing for money. You're not playing for titles and for history. That's fine. That's your prerogative. But when you're playing in major championships on the PGA Tour, you know the money comes with it, but you're playing for history. You're playing for titles. You're playing for making your mark in the game. And Bryson hasn't been saying that and doing that for a while, and his game right now is way, way off.
I want to talk about Liv here in a second, but real quickly, Brooks Koepka obviously made the move, and maybe it was just at the right time for him. But just speak to, for those who aren't following it, Koepka's grinding it out right now. Like, he's waiting as an alternate to get into some of these fields. Just talk about what because I think I'm impressed with what he's doing. Should I be? Give me the details on what he's been doing here over the last month and a half.
You, me, and every other sports fan should be amazingly impressed by what Brooks is doing. Again, it goes back to the money thing. All of us have enjoyed watching Steph Curry play the last 15 years. All of us know that he makes probably $100 million on and off the golf course. Nobody plays harder. Nobody plays with more grit, and nobody is more impactful in the last 15 years in his or her sport than Steph has been. And nobody cares about the money. Koepka came back from Liv to the PGA Tour. His punishment was $5 million to have to give to charity, which he did. Now, I know he has a ton of money, but it's still a lot of money to write a check of $5 million. He also wasn't allowed to play in the signature events. He had to grind his way back into the big events. So 2 weeks ago at Doral, I saw him in Miami. This is Brooks Koepka, Kevin. He's a 5-time major champion. He was sitting there waiting for someone to withdraw in case someone withdrew because he was an alternate at Doral, and he waited around all day. He has done that twice already this year. Last week, while we were at Quail Hollow and everybody was enjoying one of the best events of the year, the Truist Championship, on a major championship and a President's Cup golf course at Quail Hollow in Charlotte with huge crowds and a lot on the line, Brooks Koepka was playing in Myrtle Beach at the opposite field event because he's not allowed to get into that event. So he played in Myrtle Beach at the opposite field event. That is just the best. It's one of the great things about the sport. It's like seeing Adam Scott last year not qualify, not be in the U.S. Open, and try to continue his streak of playing major championship golf. And he went through qualifying like me and you could do. Adam Scott, for goodness sakes. So that's what Koepka is going through right now. And I couldn't be happier for him and the game and the way he's represented himself with the fans, with the media, and with the sport itself. It's just been fantastic. Everybody should be impressed with Brooks Koepka. Now, these guys who might come back next time around after Liv fails maybe at the end of this year perhaps, they're going to have a rockier road than Koepka. But what Koepka has done the first 5 months in 2026 has been awfully impressive. He's a first ballot Hall of Fame golfer, Kevin. He's waiting his turn at Doral and didn't get in, and then he just drove home to West Palm Beach, and he's playing Myrtle Beach instead of playing the Truist Championship. Good for him, man. That's a lot of respect.
So let me ask you, we're talking to Steve Sands, of course. Who are the players that will be allowed, assuming Liv, ends at the end of the year, who will be the players given the privilege to come back and really maybe have a tough go of it in a more difficult grind than Koepka? Give me that list.
Oh, all of them. I mean, once they're done with Liv, they'll have the opportunity to come back. Now, they'll have different parameters. So, like, take the big names. Jon Rahm, Bryson DeChambeau, Cam Smith, Dustin Johnson, Joaquin Neiman, if you want to go that deep. But the big three would be Jon Rahm, Bryson DeChambeau, and Dustin Johnson. Cam Smith, obviously, is a major champion and a player champion, but he's not on the list of those other three. But those guys trying to come back, I have been told by the players that they were very upset that they did not take the avenue that they were the first opportunity that Brooks took earlier this year when they turned
Patrick
that
Reed,
down.
right?
And Patrick Reed, but Patrick Reed's going to go the different route. He's going to go the DP World Tour, the European Tour route. He's going to take his year suspension, that kind of thing. So he's doing it differently than Brooks did. But the other three guys I talked about, Dustin Johnson, and if he even wants to come back to the PGA Tour, Jon Rahm and Bryson DeChambeau, they could have a larger fine than $5 million, quite a bit larger. They could have a much different path to take, not able to take the Myrtle Beach route, not able to take, the non-signature event route, and maybe have to go Korn Ferry Tour, maybe have to qualify, maybe have to sit out a full year suspension, something like that. It'll be really interesting to see what the PGA Tour does, but there's no question it will not be apples to apples. They will not get Now, Brooks Koepka was punished pretty severely. these guys will be punished even more severely for not taking it the first time. It'll be fascinating to see how that all plays out. But we'll know all that later this year. But it's not going to be as easy a path, and it's not an easy one for Brooks Koepka. By the way, Tyrrell Hatton is in that category as well, as wanting to come back to the PGA Tour. I think it's going to be very difficult for those guys to come back and ingratiate themselves back into the good graces of not just the fans, but their peers on the PGA Tour after all they've been through and all they've said.
All right. Before I ask you for the pool of players that can win this thing, right now, who's the best player who has not won a major? Is it Fleetwood?
I would say Tommy Fleetwood would be the what most players would tell you. He's such a good player. I mean, there are still players who are active who do, like Lee Westwood, but he can't win a major. He's 50 years plus. But of the guys right now, I think for sure Tommy Fleetwood would be at the top of that list. He's a world-class player. He's performed beautifully at the Ryder Cup. He's a FedEx Cup champion. Finally got that first win in the United States last year. He's won all over the world. Incredibly popular player on and off the golf course. And he's a fabulous, fabulous player. Now, Ludwig Oberg, Russell Henley are, maybe ranked higher.
You think he's going to win?
Henley. Oh, man, he's tough, man. He's tough as nails. They might be ranked higher than Tommy. I don't know exactly what they're ranked right now, but they're right around there. You could put them in there, but I would say Fleetwood is not just a step above those two, but he's 2 steps above those two.
Yeah. Also, I'm just looking at a list now. Cantlay would be on that list as well, and Hovland probably.
But Hovland's game has gone sideways a little bit. And Cantlay hasn't won in 4 years on the PGA Tour. I mean, it's bizarre.
All right, give me the pool of players in which this weekend's winner will come from.
All right, before that, I wanted to say one thing really quickly. The PGA of America doesn't do everything correctly, but they did do this correctly. They put it in Philadelphia in 2026 because of the 250-year anniversary of the country, and that's where the Declaration of Independence was signed. There's a reason that the PGA Championship is in Philly this year. And I've said this to you before on and off the air. The fact that the USGA did not put the U.S. Open next month at Congressional, where 3 good players have won, Rory, Ernie, and Ken Venturi, in the celebration of our birth of our country a month before July 4th or 3 weeks before July 4th is shameful that they didn't do that in D.C. because the PGA did it in Philly, which opened the door for the U.S. Open to be played in D.C., and it would have been perfect, and they didn't do that, and it makes me sick. I just think it's terrible that they decided not to do that. Having said that, who's going to win this week? I think Justin Rose is a guy to look at. I think way off the board, but not too off the board, last week's winner. I'm telling you, Chris Rayton can really, really play. And, man, Bill Raftery would say it all game long, man. That guy has onions, man, big-time onions. I think Cameron Young is going to love this golf course. I think that Xander Schauffele is going to love this golf course. But I would say Schauffele, Rose, Rayton, Scheffler should play well here. Cameron Young definitely should love it here. Matt Fitzpatrick should also love it here as well.
How about his brother, Alex? What a story that's been.
Man.
By the way, he was on the leaderboard early this morning when I was watching. I think he birdied the first 2 holes. He's at 1 over now, but that's such a great story because obviously he can play. There are a lot of guys who can play.
There are a lot of guys who can play who never get the opportunity because for whatever reason that door just doesn't open. He won with his brother, got the exemption, tied for 9th the next week in his first ever start as a tour member at Doral in a signature event. And then last week, 2 weeks in a row, by the way, a signature event. He's in the final group on Sunday with a chance to win. Wasn't his time, but that kid can really, really play. I'm happy for him. And he's also a very nice guy.
All right, Rory, you didn't mention him. Let's finish it up with him. How will he play this week? Because we talked about this, but no one really liked him that much at Augusta either. Are we making the same mistake here?
Probably. But, I mean, he should love the golf course. That blister is a weird thing, man.
Yeah, on the toe.
He has a blister on his toe. He had to remove his nail. And, you can say what you want. It's not like he's wussing out or anything. But, you got to walk 6 miles with shoes on. It's not like he's walking with flip-flops and hanging out and drinking beers in a golf cart. And I just think it's going to be awfully difficult for him to get his complete game in order because of that. And also, the last guy to win the first two majors of the year was 11 years ago when Jordan Spieth did it, which he's playing with Jordan Spieth. Great grouping. Spieth is trying to win the career Grand Slam, which Rory was the last man to do it. Spieth was the last guy to win the year's first two major championships in 2015. The PGA was in August. He won the Masters and then the U.S. Open at Chambers Bay. That's what McIlroy's trying to do. Rahm's the other guy in that group, and the reason he's in there is because he and Rory don't see eye to eye. So it's a really good. It's a really on purpose grouping by the PGA of America. I love it.
Yeah, love it.
But no, we're not overlooking Rory. We're not overlooking Rory. Of course, Rory can win, but I don't know. I just don't see him hoisting the Wanamaker Trophy this week.
Thanks for doing this. Enjoy the weekend. We'll talk soon.
4:25 on Sunday at Philadelphia.
Yep.
So we're going to go
like the
0-1. Who's
I
week
like
two?
it.
We need to. Oh, you like it?
Yeah.
I guess if you're going to go to Philly, week one's the week to do it.
Yeah, they'll have the new coordinator, Sean Mann. It'll be a game of new coordinators, although Vic Fangio is still there on defense. For
yes,
Philly.
he
But
is. Yes,
pressure year for Jalen Hurts. I had Eric Edholm from NFL Network on the show yesterday, and I said, give me the list of players, coaches who are under the most pressure. And of course, Lamar's always at the top of that list. And I said Jalen Hurts has to be on that list this year. There's a lot of pressure for Philly. I mean, they won another division. They were in the playoffs last year. They blew the game against the 49ers, but this is 9 offensive coordinators for him in 9 seasons going back to Alabama. That's insane.
Yeah,
not easy.
I'm not a huge Jalen Hurts
I know you're
guy.
not. I like him.
I like him. I think he plays.
No, I think he's better than most people think he is. But
you do?
Yeah. I've always felt that way about him. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it. I don't know.
All right.
I just don't think he's the kind of guy who's going to go win you a game with his arm.
Right.
And he's going to be under center this year. So
yep.
We'll see.
Right.
He's going to be under center a lot more this year.
Appreciate it. Steve Sands, everybody, Golf Channel all weekend, NBC for tournaments. They don't have this one this weekend. All right. When we come back, Mark Zuckerman will jump on with us. The Nats are rolling. I mean, they are truly one of the best offensive teams in Major League Baseball. Crazy through 42 games. That's next. The Nats won last night 8-7 over Cincinnati in 10. They've won 5 out of their last 7 games. They're a game right now, 1 game from being 500 on the season. We're more than a quarter of the way through the season, and they are the second highest scoring team in the bigs. Mark Zuckerman covers the team and has for years, and I would urge all of you to subscribe to his absolute best Substack column and reporting column on the team. You can find it by just going to @Mark Zuckerman on X and link to it. He's got a podcast as well called the Nats Chat Podcast, but you can go to natsjournal.com as well to get his Substack. So explain to me and everybody that's listening how the Nats have become one of the best offensive teams in baseball here in the first quarter of the season.
It's really pretty stunning, Kevin, because I don't think anybody necessarily saw that coming. I think we all figured they were a better offensive team than a pitching side of the equation. And what they've done, they have 2 absolutely elite hitters in James Wood and C.J. Abrams. They've been there pretty much since day one, little slumps here and there. But those 2 guys are among the league leaders in all these categories. The rest of them, up until the last couple of days, they didn't have anybody else that even had like a slightly above average OPS in their lineup. But what they've done is on any given day, they're getting 1 or 2 other guys to contribute. They've done a really good job of playing the matchups, lefty versus righty, bringing a guy off the bench or platoon or even make a change in game and getting the most out of them. And then the last couple of days, Dalen Lyle has turned into the Dalen Lyle that we saw late last season, which was just electric. Yeah. He's hit 3 homers now in this series, and that gives them now a 3rd bat in addition to Wood and Abrams that's really producing for them.
Yeah, they're also aggressive. I mean, they've got one of the league's leading base stealers. I think they're 4th in the bigs right now, 2nd in the National League in stolen bases. How much has that sort of added to the offensive output?
Yeah, it's a good point because like Nasim Nunez, who leads the league in stolen bases, you look at his raw offensive numbers, his hitting, and it doesn't stand out at all. It's very below average. But what he does when he does get on base, whether it's a walk or a single, he doesn't hit for any power. But it's essentially a double for him because he's going to steal second base and he's very effective at it. And sometimes he might steal third base as well. So it's kind of those hidden little things in there that's helping them, I think, become a more productive offensive team. And he's not the only one. He's the most extreme example, but Jacob Young runs well. Obviously, Wood and Abrams run well. They've done a much better job, too, at just taking extra bases, going 1st to 3rd on singles, 2nd to home on singles. You add that all up, and it has become a really fun offense to watch. And they've needed it because the pitching hasn't been so great, but more than I think we imagined, they're finding ways to win these games like last night, 8-7, even if the pitching hasn't been great.
So where is this headed? I mean, is there going to be the, what a lot of people like to refer to and isn't necessarily the truth, but sort of a regression to what the expectation was before the season, or can they keep this up?
So I think we all keep thinking that's going to happen at some point here, right? They weren't expected to be a 500 team. If anything, there was a fear they were going to take a step back from where they were last year when they only won 66 games. But as you point out, they're more than a quarter of the way through the season. So this isn't like such a small sample size that you say it's,
right.
An outlier. Like there is a chance to continue it. Maybe it's a little bit too much to ask for them to keep that going all year long, especially when the pitching is as rough as it is. But they're playing with energy right now. They are. I give both the front office and the coaching staff, I give a lot of credit. They are squeezing everything they can out of these players. They're making roster moves, bringing a guy in for a day because of a particular matchup. Like I said, they're playing these platoons, making in-game changes and using everybody they have on their bench to try to maximize every opportunity they have. They are greater than the sum of their parts right now. And I think that's a real testament to what the new organization has put together. Is that going to last for 162? I want to say no, but the further along we go, you say maybe it is possible because maybe the pitching can get better. And even if they aren't the second leading team in the majors in runs scored, maybe they also won't be the second worst team in runs given up. And so that evens out and they start winning games that are a little more low scoring. So right now they're just kind of having fun on this ride and very energized and hoping they can continue it as long as possible.
With the way James Wood finished up last year, which was painfully with the number of times he struck out, what's different so far with him here early in the season?
So I think there's a few mechanical changes that he's made, which helps. I think his eye at the plate is back to where it was before. He doesn't chase a lot. If anything, he gets called out. A lot of his strikeouts are called third strikes right on the edges of the zone, but in a way that's better than if you're fishing for breaking balls that aren't anywhere close to it. So I think it's that. And I think he's just like a lot of these guys are re-energized. The second half last season was pretty miserable for everybody involved. After the managerial change, the GM change, it was just a lame duck 3 months for everybody. And it was hard to get up, and you saw that in the performances. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't have been better. And, you're professional. Your job is to go out there and play hard every day. But I could understand why it was easy for them to just kind of maybe not have the same mental enthusiasm every day when they took the field. Right now, the enthusiasm is high. They're all in on the new staff and the work that they're all putting in. And again, that's another thing I want to see. Does that continue? Can Blake Butera and his staff keep these guys going and keep them motivated for 6 months? When the weather gets hot, maybe they do go through a losing streak at some point. I think for James, for CJ Abrams, for a lot of these guys, that's like the number one question right now.
Is CJ Abrams the best shortstop in the National League?
He might be the best offensive shortstop in the National League. Defensively, no, nowhere close to that. But part of me would say, like, wow, this is really worth noticing. And the other part of me says, this is exactly what he did the last 2 years. He was an all-star 1 year and then could have been an all-star the next year. And it was just what happened in the second half that he tailed off, and the final numbers didn't look so good. But I don't think what we're seeing from him is unusual. This is what he's been. It's just a matter of consistency. Can he do it all year long? And then on the defensive side of the equation, can he just make enough of the routine plays and make you not cringe when you see a ball hit his way? He goes through these slumps where it's tough to watch, but they're not moving him off of that position. He's more valuable there, whether it's for the Nationals or in theory for somebody else down the road. I like what I'm seeing offensively. I want to see more work out of him defensively, and he may prove to be one of the best shortstops in the National League. And that's why you don't give up on a guy like that, because there's all the potential in the world there with him.
So let's just, project to July. Do you think, certainly before the season started, the expectation was if he has a big offensive, first half of the year, he'll bring back a lot at the trade deadline. Is that still the thinking with him?
I think they are very open to seeing what is offered from other teams. And I think it's a fascinating question because other teams know the same thing we all know. They scout him. They know how this goes. They know offensively he's been great, defensively shaky, and they know that he's gone through second half slumps. So does that shape the way they formulate a trade offer for him? And if I'm Paul Taboni, I'm only making that move if I get something in return that I know is really, really good. He doesn't have to do it. You've got 2 more years of control of him. You could explore it again this winter if you want, when maybe there's more teams in the mix that aren't just teams in the middle of a pennant race. And maybe if he does show he can sustain it for a whole year, the value goes up in the winter. So I don't think he feels obligated to do it, but he's certainly going to listen to what's out there. And if the right offer was made, I think he would make it. And as hard as that is for everyone to accept, I think the front office still is looking at this and saying they came in with a plan that doesn't involve being a true contender for another couple of years. And if they don't think a guy like they did with Mackenzie Gore, if they don't think that this team's going to be in a position to really win while they're still under club control, then they don't think it's worth hanging on him for too long. They'd rather get what they can for him in a trade. Plus the fact they have several young shortstops come up through the minors that within the next 2 years are probably going to supplant him anyways.
All right, last one, talking about the weakness. The bullpen obviously is that, but just give me your overall thoughts on Cade Cavalli so far this year. I think there have been some nice nights and others that were kind of painful, but what does it look like to you and to them? What is he going to develop into?
You can see the potential there. He had those back-to-back 10 strikeout games. And
right.
Like, this is it. This is the guy
against the Braves
they were counting on all along. Yeah. And then the next one out was a dud. after that. And when he gets into trouble, the pitch count goes sky high. He can't give him more than like 4 innings. It's very reminiscent in a lot of ways of what they saw from Mackenzie Gore the last couple of years. When he was good, he was as good as anybody in the league. When he wasn't, it was really ugly. So that's the next step for Cavalli, is to prove that he can do it start after start. Now, you're not going to be dominant 10 strikeout guy every time. The key is on those nights when maybe you're not at your best, can you still give him 5-6 innings, give up 3 runs, and it's not a bad start. It's not a great start, but it's not a bad start. That's the next step for him. But the thing they keep pointing out, and I think we all have to remember, I know we've been talking about him for years, and he's been around a long time. He's been in our conscious for a long time. He's only made like 20 big league starts because of the injuries. He's still learning at the big league level. Inconsistency is not unusual for someone at that point. So I say, let it go this year. Hope that there are more good starts than bad starts. Hope he turns those bad starts into average starts. At the end of the year, let's look up and see what he is. There's still a ton of potential there with him.
Nats Chat Podcast, anywhere you get your podcasts. NatsJournal.com for Mark's Substack. He does a phenomenal job covering the team at Mark Zuckerman on X. Thanks. Enjoy today's game in Cincinnati. Appreciate it.
You got it. Thanks, Kevin.
Mark Zuckerman, everybody. I want to tell you about Foley Mechanical. We had an issue with our HVAC system about 8-9 months ago. We called Foley Mechanical. They came out and they took care of it. Actually, Dan Foley himself came out and dealt with my wife and I directly. He's an impressive guy. It's an impressive company. He owns 100% of the company. It's not a franchise. You're not going to get the runaround with a franchisee. It's not owned by some big private equity firm. He controls the quality from the equipment to the people he hires. His team, professional, skilled, really sharp, super sharp, as Coach Joe used to say. Foley Mechanical is a full-service heating and air conditioning, hot water, and boilers company, and they're the go-to for older homes with radiator heat, which is a real specialty. They work across the DMV, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, and they proudly install Amana HVAC equipment. If your system needs help, do what we did. Reach out to Foley Mechanical. Tell Dan that I sent you. So the NBA Combine, the last few days has given teams the opportunity to watch these players perform and athletically, measure. And they've had a chance to sit down and interview these prospects. And we talked, I think, on yesterday's show that the Wizards met with A.J. DeBonsa, the BYU player, the other day. Everything about DeBonsa that you're hearing is very, very positive. And then there's Darren Peterson, the other of the two, DeBonsa and Peterson. This is kind of the debate for number one overall. Sure, there's some Cam Boozer and Caleb Wilson talk, but more likely than not, number one's going to come from either the Peterson or DeBonsa. That's going to be the pick, one of those two players. He was interviewed after interviewing with the Wizards and was asked about that meeting with the Wizards. And here's what he said.
I know you talked to the Wizards. Did you learn anything new about the organization through those conversations?
I was surprised by how much they wanted to talk about Darren as a person today instead of basketball. They probably asked 2 basketball questions and the rest was about me. So.
Is there any part of your game you feel is slept on?
I think this year people kind of got away from my playmaking ability just because I was off the ball so much. And when I was feeling well, I think I guarded pretty good as well.
That first part of the answer, I don't know about you guys, but this has been a guy that has literally been headlines all season long in college basketball, not necessarily for the games he's played, but for the games he hasn't played. And the reasons for him not playing those games, cramps, ankles, suited up, warming up, ready to play against the number one team in the country, Arizona, at Allen Fieldhouse in early February, and then deciding that he wasn't going to play in the game, didn't feel up to it. That was the one that clearly frustrated the Kansas staff, Bill Self, the head coach. Now there's, a lot of revisionist history. There's a lot of, he was on creatine. He was oversubscribed on creatine or taking too much of it. That caused the dehydration. I'm not suggesting that any of what's coming out now or what's been written in stories about Darren Peterson, there have been now multiple stories written about him, not his playing, but about the reasons why he missed 11 games this year and begged out of 4 others during the game. That's what the Darren Peterson story has been all season long. It's not been about his talent. His talent's unmistakable. And all of these reasons for all of the games missed and all of the games that he left early could be totally legitimate. But to be completely detached from that narrative about you for the last 5 months is interesting. It speaks for him to say that I was surprised by how much the team focused on getting to know me as a person. Just 2 questions about basketball, the rest about me. Surprising. And actually, the way and the tone in which he delivered that answer was like, why? How detached do you have to be from the reality around you to not know why? Or maybe he really was detached and kept detached from everybody around him. We had John Fanta on the show on Monday, the longtime college basketball broadcaster, analyst, play-by-play guy, et cetera. And I said, what's the biggest concern that people should have about Darren Peterson? And he said, his circle. And it's a legitimate concern because there was a lot of involvement in how his season went. That's really quite a remarkable answer to say that the number one thing, the number one takeaway from his meeting with the Wizards was the surprise he had that they wanted to get to know him as a person and that there were just 2 basketball questions and the rest was about me. Like there's either a detachment or an aloofness that is, I don't think, the best look. It could be very innocent. He was kept so sheltered from the outside discussion about him during the course of the season that maybe it is a legitimate surprise, but that is unlikely. That is unlikely. That's a bit detached, aloof, borderline combative, actually. Like, why are you asking me? There should be no questions about me. No, all of the questions should be about you. We know what you can do. We've seen how smooth you are, how effortless it looks when you play basketball. It's about when you don't play basketball and learning why you didn't play as much basketball as, by the way, the other guy who was at the top of most draft boards, AJ DeBonsa, played in every game and basically averaged like 37 minutes a game and played 6 games over the last month and a half where he played 40 or more minutes. The college game is only 40 minutes, 2 20-minute halves. The reason he played one game more than 40 minutes is it went to overtime, and he played 43 minutes in that game. Did not like that answer from Darren Peterson. Now, a lot of these kids at 18, 19, 20 years old are just immature, and you've got to project as to when they are in a professional environment, will they mature? Are they smart enough emotionally and intellectually? And what will that circle involvement be? But the only questions I would have expected, having followed this story all season long, would have been about him, getting to know him, finding out why he missed so much basketball in the one season he had at the college level. Kind of a stunning answer, to be honest with you, from Darren Peterson. Michael Winger was on Ryan Russillo's podcast and had some interesting things to say about the lottery and about the trades during the course of the season. I'm going to try to get some of that into next hour. We'll keep you posted on the schedule. Right now, about 9 games on Washington's schedule have been released, including the opener against Philadelphia on the road, Sunday, September 13th at 4:25. But up next, Brian Keefe, the head coach of the Wizards, will join the show. All right, it is my pleasure to welcome onto the show the head coach of the Washington Wizards, Brian Keefe. The Wizards, of course, got number 1 overall in the draft lottery on Sunday. We'll talk to him about that in a few minutes. But, Brian, I wanted to start with this. You've been presiding as the coach over most of the last 3 seasons, seasons which have been a commitment to the future, a commitment to giving the franchise its best chance down the road to be an upper echelon NBA team consistently. We all understand what these last 3 seasons have been about. I want you to describe, in your words, what it's been like to be the head coach where the priority has been more about developing young players than actually trying to win games. What's that been like?
I think the thing we've looked at as an organization is, and you kind of said it at the beginning, is we want to build something that's going to be sustainable. So we can have many cracks at the championships as you can. And how are you going to do that? Well, we're going to go through a little bit of a phase here where, we were going to build the team through the draft. And the things that we thought were important is we were going to teach our guys the habits that go into winning. So that was always my focus, is that we weren't going to skip any steps. We were going to build it brick by brick, and we were going to establish in a way of how we worked and how we trained and how we prepared every day. And I think obviously it was like 9 guys who were 21 and under on our roster to start the year.
Right.
And we're teaching those guys how to do that. And you can see that is starting to pay off, and you can see that the jumps some of these guys have made, pretty much all of them have, but you can obviously see that with Alex and Keyshawn and Bob and Bilal and Addie and Trey Johnson and Will Riley. You saw the growth of them this year. They were going to be opportunities with them because of where we were as a roster, but they took advantage of those opportunities. But it was really the work behind the scenes and learning how to be a professional. Those are the things we focus on because we think that's what's going to make us sustainable, and that was the goal all along.
That seems from afar, from the outside looking in, to be a challenge, because what you're describing, it seems intuitive. It seems like there are certain habits that go into winning and being a professional. But at the end of the day, ultimately, when you got into the games themselves, winning wasn't necessarily the priority. That seems like a bit of a conflict. No?
I disagree with that, because there's a lot that goes into winning. Nobody just shows up and just wins. Even a veteran player just doesn't show up and win. Every team starts every year 0-0, even when we go into next year. You still have to build the proper habits. And what we wanted to see from our guys was we would get into these more competitive situations. And I think you saw that this year. The amount of more competitive games were more crunch time games we were in, and our record ended up being very good in those. But these guys were developing as we got into the mid-December, early January, into the All-Star break. You saw us playing a brand that was growing as a team. And I think that was really important because, we're all competitors. We want to win. We all are like that. We have competitive guys in our locker room, but are we building it the right way? Are we doing things the right way? Or, am I going to try to do something where maybe I get a one-off win because maybe I would do something to trick the game to just get that one night. Now, we want to build something that's going to be lasting and can handle under pressure. So to me, that was like an exciting, challenging. All of it's challenging. This is, professional sports, but I think we were built for that, and our organization's built for stuff like that. So to me, it was like really exciting to help shape these guys in terms of being a team that's going to be able to be growing and competing as we go down the line.
Will Dawkins told me, I don't know, maybe a month and a half ago when he was on the show, he said it was right after the Anthony Davis trades, or 2 months ago or whenever that was. He said, it's now time to develop players in kind of a new setting, one where the games, he said, for a lack of a better description, are more meaningful to the standings. Explain to me the difference between doing what you've been doing, developing players, developing habits, etc., in an environment where the standings didn't necessarily matter, They mattered actually for the other side of or the bottom of the standings versus what it will be next year when you are teaching these habits, developing these habits, but also you've got an eye on the standings, hoping to continue to climb up them.
Yeah, I think obviously we make the additions of Trey and Anthony Davis to our group, and I think the way we look at it is they're going to help our group grow. They're going to help us put us in positions to be, obviously ascending is I think is a good word in building towards where we want to go. But they're going to help our younger players on the roster continue to develop. We know what Trae Young can do with his ability to pass, and we felt like that was going to be a thing that was going to help really our team grow tremendously. And then we obviously got, we're very lucky to add Anthony, after that trade, and we all know what he can bring in terms of being a defensive anchor, and he'll do that with Alex, and then obviously his ability to score. I think it's just going to put our players in positions to make that next step, and that part is, part of the learning curve is, being in these games that are going to be, matter, and keep climbing and learning from that. But I think these two guys, adding them to the roster, gives us a great opportunity to do that.
What will we learn about you, Brian Keefe, when you start coaching games that matter more in terms of the standings that we don't know about you through these first 2.5 years in a completely different environment?
I think you're going to probably realize I'm just probably the same person. I believe in the things I believe in, creating an environment where our guys can improve every day, building consistent habits. I was very fortunate to start my career in San Antonio many years ago, and that was kind of the things you learn there. I was around all these great players and obviously great coaches and a great organization. That there are no skipping steps. Winning is very hard, but how you do it is by building consistent habits. We're going to continue to do those things. Obviously, with the addition of some veteran players, and obviously we're very excited to add another, great young player to our roster with the number 1 pick. I think you're going to see me coach the same way. We're going to continue to grow and get better, but you'll see an uptick in being more competitive next year.
But do you think that something that maybe, and I watched enough over the last 2.5 years, but I don't have a sense of the following as an example. What Brian Keefe is like in game planning to win a game, in-game X's and O's. I think there was a lot of that. You did a lot of that, obviously, during those first 2.5 years. But is there anything that you really weren't emphasizing because it wasn't part of sort of the overall big plan that now we'll see more of?
I wouldn't say that. I think obviously we all have to grow and get better. And I'm just like the players, that we're always growing and learning. But I think I've been on many teams that have been very successful, and I believe we and myself as an organization all know what it takes to win, and that's, can you be efficient on both sides of the ball? I think we've seen stretches where we've done that. I think we had a good month-and-a-half stretch where we were about 15th or 16th in defense and about the same in offense. But that's what drives winning, is can you be efficient on both sides? Obviously with the additions I talked about, I think that's going to help our team grow and put ourselves in more positions to do that. But the winning is every day, is how you prepare and how you train. That stuff I believe we've done at a high level since I've been here. And that's the stuff that I think is where, the cement is starting to dry. We're starting to build some continuity to how we do things and how we approach things. I think that's the stuff that's going to win the day for us.
So I probably should have opened with this, but congratulations. Getting number 1 on Sunday was a thrill for everybody. Will you take us into the behind the scenes of the lottery? I know you were there. It's true, correct, that when we see the unveiling of the picks, that you guys have already been told the result. True?
No, not true. No, I saw it in real time like you saw it.
Oh, you did, and John did, but did Winger or Dawkins know before?
There's always someone in the back room representing your team. This year was Michael Winger, our president was back there. So he was the only one who knew beforehand, but he has not been allowed out of that room. So the rest of the world is, it's live on TV. I'm learning just like you do what happened. So obviously a very surreal moment.
So he's not texting you guys saying we got it.
We can't. They're taking their phone. They're taking their phone.
Okay.
They can't communicate with anybody. So no, he's not communicating with anybody.
All right. So I know you've been coaching a basketball team. You haven't been scouting college basketball, but you were a college basketball player. You're a fan of the sport. Do you have any thoughts on any of these players? I'll start with AJ DeBonsa. Give me a thought or two on DeBonsa.
The one thing I do know, I know this is a very deep draft from what our scouts have said, and Will Dawkins does a great job leading that group. Obviously, I am so immersed into our team and our season. I obviously know that the day was going to come where we were going to have, find out where we're selecting. I have not overly gone down to the, which I will start doing now, but, we're still out here in Chicago and interviewing people and stuff, but my job is to coach the team during the year, and we have scouts out there all year long, watching, learning, studying these guys. I'm obviously trust what they do as we go into this next part of, leading up into draft in June. This is where I get more involved, start watching more film, start having conversations with the front office. But I really trust. We got a great group. You can see from our track record of the guys that we've drafted here in the last, since I've been here, starting with, I guess, with Bilal, then, the guys we drafted in the last 3 years. We've had 7 guys playing the Rising Star games, which I think is a record. Right. That's never happened in the last 2 years. So I got great faith in our department, our scouting department, obviously led by Will. So I probably don't have too much insight onto the players yet, but I do know it is a deep draft.
But you said that now's the time you start to begin kind of watching film, and perhaps are you taking part in these interviews as well?
Yeah, we always do that as a group together. So that's what the process we're involved in this week, and then obviously we'll start having at this time of year draft workouts and that type of stuff happen.
What's the top 1, 2, 3 things that you as a group are looking for when you sit down with a prospect face to face for the first time?
I think the one thing I can tell you is that I can just probably tell you from the guys that we have now that we have guys that we've identified who really are committed to basketball, who love working on their craft and love the game itself. I think those are the things that we really value, people who are really want to work to get better at their craft. We have our roster now is filled with guys like that. Our guys right now are already back in the gym, back in Washington, D.C. right now, working every day to get better. So we're always trying to find people who have that love of the game and wanted to continue to improve. I think those are the things that stand the test of time for us, the type of people that we would want in our organization.
This may be overly simplistic in terms of the way I've seen the last 3 years. It's like I as a lifelong Bullets Wizards fan, I absolutely have been okay with what the franchise has been doing. I'm excited about the future for the first time in a long time. But ultimately, you got to get the players right. And you've talked about a lot of the young players. You've got 7 first-round guys from the last 3 years on your roster. You'll add to that next month. But if you go back and you look at basically all the way back to the 2004 Pistons, that was the last team. You could argue the 2014 Spurs, but pretty much you have had to have a top 5 superstar kind of a player on your team to win the title. There have been teams that have gotten to the finals without one, but to win the whole thing, you got to have a top 5 player in the league. And part of, from my standpoint, maybe it's simplistic, but it's like eventually if you get as many swings as possible, the idea is you land on a lot of really good players, but you also somehow end up with, and sometimes it's luck because this is an inexact science, this draft, but land on a top 5 player, 5, 6, 7 years down the road, that player is a legitimate MVP or MVP candidate. My question after all of that is, Two-part. One, do you agree that that is part of the goal of these last 3 years, is to get as many swings as possible with the idea that if you do, you could land on a top 5 player, 5, 6, 7 years into his career?
I think, when you look at, it's great that you bring up the history of the game. I think there are many ways to, build that. Obviously the path we chose and we think is the right path we've been building through our draft. And that gives you an opportunity to hopefully, develop and draft one of those guys who can land in, like you said, being a high level player in this league. But obviously they've also added some talents through free agents for us too. I mean, through trades and free agency.
Yeah.
So there's different ways to build it. We obviously added addition of some really high level players to our team through trades during the season. I think there are different ways to do it. I think in the NBA now, I think depth is really an important thing. Depth of your roster. But yes, you still need, any team needs coaches, organizations. We all need really high end talent to help push us over the top. And we believe this is one of the ways that you acquire that.
Yeah, no, your point's a good one. Like, SGA wasn't drafted by Oklahoma City. They traded,
That's right.
Paul George in a massive deal. But you have to have those assets and you have to be in position to pull out that trade. But the second part of my question was, forget June for a moment and who was at the top of the draft. Are any of the players, any of the young players that you have on your roster right now, do you see that possibility with any of those players that, a Will Riley or, a Keyshawn George or a Trey Johnson is a potential MVP candidate down the road 5, 6, 7 years from now when they're 25, 26, 27 years old?
The one thing I've worked with a lot of great players through the years. The one thing I don't ever believe in is putting a ceiling on anybody. What I do value about all the guys you talked about, and you guys talked about Bob and Alex and all these guys too, is that there's room for them to continue to get better and better. That's the key, is that you don't always know how it's going to shape out. That's probably when Shea was drafted, probably no one would have thought he would have turned into that, but obviously he has. So I think those things are the things that matter to me, is that we're going to keep putting our guys in positions to grow as an organization. And I think a lot of these guys have the work ethic, the mental mindset to accomplish some great things. So you never know. And I don't want to put every ceiling on any one of them, because I believe in our guys and I believe in the character they're about.
Have you been watching the playoffs? I'm assuming you have been, right?
I have, yeah.
All right, so I think we played San Antonio once this year and faced Wemby once, but you did the previous year as well. Have we ever seen anything like him, Brian, in the history of this league?
Great question. Probably not, I guess. It'd be my first guess. Obviously, a great player. I don't like to comment too much on other players and other teams, but obviously a generational player, just the impact that he can have on, really both ends, which, obviously is so important in our league. That, obviously a tremendous talent, tremendous player.
How do you defend him? The presence defensively at the rim, I mean, it's so altering. You just, in this series, you just see it so clearly. But how do you defend him? Because Rudy Gobert can't guard him. And I was curious if there's maybe a creative way to defend him that you haven't seen yet.
Well, we're working on these things now. I don't want to give away our scouting secrets yet, but he's obviously like any of these guys who are the better players in the league. You can't do it by yourself. It's a whole team effort to do this, to guard these guys in this league, and he's one of those guys.
I thought the other night DeSumo actually was guarding him on a couple of possessions, and I wondered whether or not a smaller player actually might give him more of a problem, especially if he's not on the low block. But it's hard to put the ball on the floor as a 7'5" guy against a 6'3" guy. versus, another 7-footer and Gobert. Did you notice that? And I'm curious as to what you thought.
Yeah, I'm obviously not going to get into too much of that stuff, but I think, I think one thing in this league is that you need to be good. You need versatile players to be good offensively and defense. Most important, defensively too, is that can you have versatility to give teams different looks? That's probably an example of that.
I'm not asking you to give away next year's finals secret. I'm not asking you to. I would love it if you were holding back for next year and how you were going to have Anthony Davis or Bilal Coulibaly or maybe Bub guard Wemby in the finals. What's been the best part for you, or what's been the most entertaining part of these playoffs so far for you?
Obviously I'm a fan of the game and I can watch it from that lens, but I'm also a coach at heart. So, there's always stuff to learn stylistically, how people are playing, offensive things and running, defensive schemes, that type of stuff. So there's always the playoffs is obviously the intensity level, the focus level goes up, the game planning, you're playing a team, night after night pretty much. And you really can walk into stuff. So it's fun for me to see the strategic part and seeing how teams are doing things. You just gave an example of something. So it's always fun and there's always something to learn. The playoffs are an amazing time in our business and that's a place that we want to grow and be into. But for me, there's a lot to learn from it by watching and studying it.
Hopefully next year, we won't be talking about any kind of lottery. We'll be talking about a second-round playoff series. I look forward to those days and wish you the best of luck in the coming year. It'll be a much different year and one in which I think, a lot of us will be anticipating it. Thanks so much for doing this and enjoy the next month plus.
Yeah, appreciate that. Nice chatting with you, and we'll speak soon.
Brian Keefe, the head coach of the Washington Wizards. Spring is here, and it's felt like spring. Nice spring so far. Great time to open up your windows, especially at night when you're trying to sleep. Let that fresh air in. I did it the other night. Look, if you've got older windows, it's hard to do. They leak, they're broken, they need repainting. Sometimes they're hard to open, hard to close. The pros at Window Nation can help you get new energy-efficient windows at a great price. Right now, it's the buy 4, get 4 free sale. So you're paying half price on your purchase. For every 4 windows you purchase, the next 4 are free. To find out how many windows you need in your home, that starts with a free in-home estimate. Call Window Nation at 866-90-NATION. Head to windownation.com. They'll come out in an hour or less at a time convenient for you. They'll actually tell you which windows in your home need to be replaced. Most people don't even know that. And then they'll leave you with a quote, and then they'll leave you alone. You make the call on what you want to do. But buy 4, get 4 free. Add to that, if you choose to finance the purchase, no money down, no monthly payments, and no interest charged for 2 years. You're going to be working with a company right now that's got the best offer, the widest variety of product, over 1,500 window styles, and a company that has a 96% satisfaction rating, a company with 45,000 five-star reviews on social media, and a company that was rated number 1 by Forbes magazine among all window installation companies across the United States. 866-90-NATION, windownation.com if you need new windows. Up next, Jaden Daniels will be a part of something we're all going to watch when we get to July. More on that next. All right, schedule updates. Nothing new on Washington's schedule. There are a couple of reports that they're going to play the Giants in week 5, which would technically be the bye week that I've projected. That seems right, but that's not been released by any of the major reliable NFL schedule leak social media accounts. We'll see. But at this point, if you're just tuning in, about 9 games of Washington's upcoming schedule have been either officially announced or leaked. They are chronologically in order: at Philly, opening day, September 13th, 4:25. That's the season opener. Week 3 against Seattle at home. Week 4 against Indianapolis in London. Week 8 against the Eagles at home on Sunday Night Football. Week 9 against the Rams at home, 1 o'clock. Week 10, a Thursday night game in the Meadowlands against the Giants. Week 11, which is Thanksgiving week, the Monday night, November 23rd, Cincinnati at home on Monday Night Football. And then Houston at home on the 14th, in week 14, 1 o'clock game. Week 15, Atlanta at home at 1 o'clock. And it does now look like, I'm seeing Washington closing with Dallas, but not necessarily where the game is at this point, because we haven't gotten either Dallas game. So we'll see. That's it so far. I mean, you knew about the Indianapolis game from yesterday when they announced officially all of the international games, and we now have, roughly 9 of their 17 games. At least according to some reliable NFL schedule leak sites. And real quickly, Washington will not be involved on Thanksgiving Day or Thanksgiving Eve or Black Friday. And as far as Christmas Day goes, they won't be involved in a Christmas Eve game. And 2 of the 3 Christmas Day games have been leaked: Green Bay, Chicago, Rams, Seattle. I'm guessing that's 4 NFC teams. I'm guessing the 3rd game on Christmas Day more likely to be an AFC matchup, which would mean Washington wouldn't be a part of that either. That's my guess for the 2 big holiday windows. We'll see. More of it to come out. So, did you see this yesterday? Another season, another docuseries titled Quarterback will be out on July 14th, produced, directed, and appearing on Netflix. Remember, year 1 was that first year where we had Mahomes, Marcus Mariota, and Kirk Cousins involved. Year 2, last year, was when we discovered Jared Goff had a beautiful young wife. Joe Burrow was a part of that as well. And so was Kirk Cousins during his year in Atlanta. They announced yesterday that this season 3 of Quarterback will feature Baker Mayfield, Cam Ward, Joe Flacco, and Jaden Daniels. I can't believe that we didn't know that this was going on. I'll talk to Ben about it tomorrow. I've not talked to him. I should have reached out to him before the show. I'm wondering if people on the beat knew about this. And if they did know about this, I'm surprised others didn't find out. I mean, it seems like you would know if Netflix was following Jaden Daniels around during the season. What's interesting about this, look, I'm not expecting Jaden Daniels to be, a super dynamic, personality on this show. It's not who he is naturally, or at least publicly. I shouldn't say naturally, because it's very possible we're going to learn that he is hysterically funny behind the scenes. Who knows what we're going to learn about him. But if we go back, if this goes back to before the season began, there should be some stuff on Terry's contract negotiation. Like, we'll get some nuggets out of this that we didn't know. We'll get some reveals about last year that we didn't know. This series has produced a lot of that. Now, a lot of the players involved in a lot of the sensitive situations have been protected to a certain degree. Remember year one when Marcus Mariota in Atlanta essentially went AWOL for like a couple of weeks. That was not even addressed on the Netflix season one series. In fact, once he went AWOL and wasn't the starter anymore, he was basically eliminated from the show. The last 3 or 4 episodes, he wasn't even a part of it. But the Terry stuff could be interesting. The Green Bay game in which he got injured during the game, stayed in the game when they were getting mauled, could be interesting. The Monday night game against the Bears when he fumbled at the end. The Seattle game where he dislocated his elbow. The Minnesota game when he threw the pick to Van Ginkel and chased him down and got hurt again. The decision to hold him out the final 4 games to see maybe behind the scenes how he was dealing with that decision. Yeah, there could be, this will be must watch for Washington fans. Again, not expecting Jaden to be the star of the show. Not expecting that. But for us, it'll be must watch just to see if we learn anything about, a lot of different things, how things played out last year. You can learn about not only the quarterback, but the people that are close to the quarterback. We might learn a lot about David Blau before the season starts. Who knows?
Well, and there's also another kind of reason I feel like this could have flown under the radar a little bit, because the NFC East, we were the subject of in-season Hard Knocks too. So
right.
Camera crews were already around, so I could see why this would have flown under the radar a little bit.
Okay, that's a really good point. I didn't think about that, but that Hard Knocks NFC East was like over the last 5 weeks of the season.
Right.
Not the entire season.
I mean, man, if they're around all season getting B-roll and stuff, production crews get very, very into it. So I could see.
Okay,
I could see that.
That makes sense. And you're saying that for the people that were out there, maybe they just assumed.
Yeah, I mean,
that the cameras were there for HBO.
Yeah, they'll usually have like NFL media, and pretty much that's all they have on their what's the word, pennies, I guess. You know what I mean?
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Again, how long did HBO NFC East Hard Knocks run for? 4 weeks, 5 weeks?
I think it was
something like that.
I think it was like the last 6 weeks.
And it's the end of the season, very end of the season. But if you're right, and they were there the entire season, I don't remember. I just remember them picking it up late in the season when we were, getting ready to play the Giants. I think in the Meadowlands. I think that was the first game.
Yeah, it debuted in December, so I think they started probably picking up the filming around November type area, really around Thanksgiving.
Yeah. All right. So question 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Are you looking forward to seeing this Netflix quarterback series with Jaden Daniels? And what do you think we might learn from it? 301-230-0980. We'll take your calls on that. Also, I've got a Michael Winger, the team president of the Wizards, soundbite to play about something that I thought was interesting from his appearance on the Ryan Russillo podcast. We'll get to that. We'll keep you posted on the schedule. Nothing new since I last went through the 9 games that have been leaked, but I'm sure we'll get at least one more game before we are done at 1 o'clock. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app. You can watch this show on the Team 980's YouTube channel. Just hit the subscribe button and hit the like button when you get there. All right. If you want to weigh in on Jaden Daniels being a part of the quarterback series on Netflix this summer, 301-230-0980. Do you think we'll learn anything? We actually have our Waldorf Honda Twitter poll up, which Max has put up as the following. Which of the 4 quarterbacks will end up being the star of the Netflix new season of quarterbacks? Baker Mayfield, Cam Ward, Joe Flacco, Jaden Daniels. I'm going to guess Flacco. I think Flacco.
It's a good guess.
It's a dad thing with Flacco, like it was with Cousins, but Flacco's very likable. We'll find out. I mean, who knows? For him, it'll span over 2 teams, right? Cleveland and Cincinnati, because he got traded during that during the season. So our X poll of the day, driven by Waldorf Honda. It all starts with a click. WaldorfHonda.com. Before we get to any of your calls, I did want to play something that I promised I'd play for everybody. And that is Michael Winger, the team president, Monumental basketball team president, was on the Ryan Russillo podcast, Ryan Scott's old radio partner. And I think we'll try to get Ryan on the show to talk about some of this stuff next week. But he was asked about kind of when the direction for next year changed, and whether or not that was the specific question. You'll hear maybe the question or not, but he talks about the Trae Young trade really changing the entire thought process about the timeline. Here's what he said.
Our group sort of, we meet all the time. We were watching these guys are like Alex got a lot better, and Keyshawn got a lot better, and Bub got a lot better. Maybe it's time to roll the ball out and be in considerably more competitive games. Okay, so we make that decision. Then it is, well, we've got basically 2 avenues to add proven talent, draft and free agency. You look at the you look at the free agent prospects for the 26 offseason. And we had a ton of cap space at the time. We were scheduled to have like $85 million in room. It was our opinion that Trae Young was the best free agent on the board. And we decided internally, okay, if this is the best free agent, he fits with us, he would really help our young players get better. He'd help us be in competitive games. Let's put in a call, see if this is even worth the conversation. To Atlanta, see if they have plans to retain him, whatever the case may be. And we immediately got into really friendly, professional conversations with the Hawks that escalated quickly, and we ended up trading for Trae Young. And then so once we got Trae, it became I don't want to say our philosophy, because our philosophy has been the same from day one. But our competitive approach changed, and we knew that we would be some degree of good with Trae Young, and even if it was just all of our young guys. But you're still 3 weeks away from the trade deadline, so you're talking to every team. And a friend of mine was managing Dallas, and so we sort of danced around AD a little bit, what are you thinking? What are you doing? And then it became sort of apparent that they would entertain a conversation. And so internally we decided, well, hell, we've already gotten Trae Young. What if we paired him with one of the best bigs in the league, one of the best bigs of all time? And we just we went with it. It was, the price point was right for us. Neither player displaced sort of a proven player in that position. And we knew that whatever happens at the draft, whoever we draft is going to be able to fit between TY and AD and Alex. And everything else is these guys got to compete for their minute.
That was interesting. So I read some of those comments, Max, and I asked you to get the sound. So that was the first time of actually listening to him describe it. Tone sometimes is everything. It really sounds like the process began with not necessarily the end result, meaning we're going to go try to compete in 2026, 2027. We want to compete. We want to be better. And Trae Young's the best free agent possibility. Why not acquire him now? Remember, too, the dilemma that they had in the moment. CJ McCollum was playing really good basketball, and they had won something like 6 out of 8 games, and he was starting to personally threaten the protection of their draft choice in 2026, because if they had finished, outside of the bottom 4, there would have been a chance in the lottery that they could have ended up at 9 or worse, which meant their pick would have been lost to the Knicks. But so that was part of it, I think, in the moment. He didn't speak to that. But it's like, okay, we got Trae Young. Why don't we see if, wow, Anthony Davis is available? How about pairing the two of them? I would have thought that it would have been a bit more calculated, a bit more planned, rather than sort of spontaneous. And I thought it was interesting. I actually, I think that's one of the, I think I had Winger on the show when he was first hired. I don't think we've had him back. I'd love to get him back because he actually sounds like a really good interview and willing to sort of open up about some of that stuff. So that's the way it all kind of came together. I think when he did say, I just wrote down this one thing that he said that I just don't agree with. He said, we knew we were going to be to some degree of good once we got Trae Young. Yeah, I wouldn't have said that. Like, I wouldn't have said just adding Trae Young and you're going to be some degree of good. Because I think the only reason 2026, well, the number 1 pick now makes it super intriguing. But the most interesting part of the Wizards season next year, by far and away, is Anthony Davis. Because he is and has been, when he plays, big if, when he's healthy, he's been an absolute superstar and a two-way superstar in the game. And so if you get that player and then you team him up with a veteran point guard who can score and create, make people better, he's also a liability defensively, but with Sar and AD defensively, you kind of have some protection behind Trae Young on the perimeter. But now you can see if those two play with the young, group that in some cases is ascending, or it certainly appears to be. Well, now you're talking about a team that I said it when they made the AD trade. This is a team that if he plays, call it 55, 60 plus games, they could win 45 plus games and be in the main draw and avoid the play-in. Like they could be a top 6 seed in the East. I mean, I think it could be even better. Anthony Davis is a major wild card. First of all, let's hope he's on the team. I see all these, trade ideas. Somebody just sent me one where it's like, AD to Milwaukee with a pick for Giannis back with a pick. I mean, there's, been some LeBron talk. LeBron's not coming to Washington, people, even to team up with the guy that he last won a title with, Anthony Davis. But Anthony Davis is, and then AJ DeBonsa, perhaps, or Darren Peterson. That's the real super kind of must-watch element to the team next year. Because, again, the difference between, 17 wins and 45 is somebody like Anthony Davis. It's not Trae Young. It's not even the combination of Trae Young, a good young core, and the number 1 pick. Like, if they're going to compete and they're going to be in the postseason next year, even as a play-in team, it's going to be because Anthony Davis played a lot next year. I'd love to see that. I would. I hope that he doesn't get dealt. I hope he's excited by the AJ DeBonsa, ad here. I'd love to see that because I actually can see a Trae Young, Anthony Davis combo working. And then defensively with the likes of Coulibaly and Sar and Anthony Davis, a formidable defensive team. And then, there are some young players that are really, really intriguing. And it could be, I'm not predicting a Cooper Flagg kind of rookie season for DeBonsa or Peterson or Boozer or Caleb Wilson or Darius Acuff Jr. Although it would not surprise me if Aiyuk Jr. with the right team comes out of the gate next year averaging 20 plus as a rookie. That's not going to surprise me. Interesting the way it kind of all came together, if that's the way it legitimately all came together. I don't have any reason not to believe it. All right, we've got a minute and a half. I'm not going to have a chance to get to the calls on Jaden Daniels because I want to just update real quickly this schedule. It does look like, based on some of the reports out there, that Washington will close the season with Dallas. And so we don't know when the other Dallas game is at this point. We know when the 2 Philadelphia games are, and we now think we know when the 2 Giant games are. Week 10 for sure, based on reliable leakers in the Meadowlands on Thursday night, and Week 5 in Washington, which would mean the bye week would not be post-London. We'll see. Still might be, because that came from a less reliable social media schedule leaker. But if you don't know at this point, it does appear, this isn't official. It'll become official tonight at 8 o'clock, that Washington will open up its 2026 season in Lincoln Financial against the Eagles on Sunday, September 13th, with the game scheduled to be the second half of the doubleheader at 4:25. I would assume that would be on Fox. As I mentioned earlier, I see already, based on reliable schedule leaks, 2 games that are advantage Washington versus, the disadvantage. And that is Seattle and the Rams, the 2 West Coast teams that they host on their schedule, both come to Landover for Sunday 1 o'clock games. Now, one of the things we'll be able to do when the schedule comes out in full is we'll be able to, and Warren Sharp does it pretty quickly, and that is compute the net rest numbers, because those are real. The teams with the most net rest days tend to have winning records, and the teams with the worst net rest situations tend to have bad records. Washington had one of the worst net rest numbers last year, and they were 5-12. So we'll see what happens this year, and we won't know that until the entire schedule is complete. But at Philly, week 1, 4 right now standalone games. Those games would be Indianapolis and London, Philadelphia on a Sunday night at home, the Giants on a Thursday night, and the Bengals on November 23rd at home on a Monday night. Still possible that you could get another standalone game as well. All right, tomorrow we will know the entire schedule for sure. Keep it here. I'm sure Chris will keep you posted. Guys will keep you posted on the additions to the schedule based on these, I think, reliable leaks for the most part. We'll see. All right, back tomorrow.